here. And joining us now, the Right Honorable Mayor of Natchez, Dan Gibson. How you doing this morning, Mayor?
Good morning, Dave. I'm doing great. A beautiful day here in Natchez. I hope things are shining down on you up in Jackson.
Well, it's beautiful all over the state. Every day is a good day if you're in Mississippi.
You know, that's really true. We are blessed to live in this great Magnolia state.
You know, before we get to the serious topic, I just want to say, has the Balloon Festival happened yet, or is that's coming up, isn't it?
We had our best festival ever, Dave. Our 40th Balloon Festival this past weekend. That Balloon Festival is just glowing strong. I mean, it was a beautiful weekend.
Well, it's been a year or two since I've made it to the Balloon Festival. It seems like I've always got 17 other things going on that weekend. But the last time I was there, it looked like you had about 9 million balloons. They were everywhere.
And I think about 18 million people. It really is overwhelming sometimes. And for a little town that's right there on the highest bluff of the mightiest river with all the history we've got, it's really amazing when you can see thousands of people packed in, having a good time, and being safe while they're doing it.
Well, that word safe leads us right into the topic I want to talk to you about, because it is rare that I read an op-ed written by someone and actually start physically applauding while I'm reading it. But that's what happened to me with the op-ed we published Friday from you regarding crime in Mississippi, violent crime, and specifically repeat offenders. And I'm going to lead it. I'm going to kind of jump in front of the conversation just a little bit to get it started. Is it time to put a 3 strikes law into effect for everybody in violent crime?
Gosh, I think that's a great idea. You know, it's getting out of hand. And here we were going into our festival weekend on high alert because things are happening all over the state, Dave. And we are so grateful we had a great, safe weekend. But my heart is heavy because all over our state, law enforcement is just beating its head against a wall. All of these great officers we have having to arrest the same people over and over because all over our state we seem to have a system that's broken, and the offenders become repeat offenders, and then before you know it, they're picking up the guns. We're having violent crime like we're seeing, and it's always repeat offender in 80% or more of the cases.
Yes, and that's the thing. If we had a strict 3 strikes and you're out law, in other words, the third time you commit a violent crime, the third time you shoot somebody, for example, you're not getting out. You're done. It's over. You're just in jail.
Dave, I'm going to incorporate that into my talking points. I think you are right on.
Because if you did that, here's the interesting thing. Yeah, it is past time. But if you look at the stats, if you did that, if we put that into effect, over half of violent crime would go away at that point, looking at the stats.
In fact, probably more than that. I was talking to a retired sheriff just last week. He's also a retired Mississippi Highway Patrolman. He said to me, Mayor, the gun violence is very rarely a first-time offender. People build up confidence. They get away with crime. They then think, well, hey, the sky's the limit. And he told me something that my police officers have told me time and time again. It's 80% repeat offenders. I want to introduce Mississippi to a new word today. Dave, that word is 80%itis. And we are suffering from it, and it will be a fatal condition, and it will kill our communities if we don't overcome it. 80% of the violent crime happening in Mississippi is repeat offenders. And if you look at the rules set by the Supreme Court, and it's not like I used to think, it's not the legislature. Supreme Court sets the bond guidelines. And when judges, from municipal judge to county judge, circuit judge, when they are setting bonds, they follow these rules, and actually many don't even follow the rules. The bond guidelines are low. You can bond out for murder for as low as $25,000 in this state. That's $2,500 if you have to put up the 10%, and then you can finance that. with a bail bondsman, maybe $100 every other week or so while you're waiting on trial for 2 or 3 years. Now, I want to just mention this, though. In the rules set by the Supreme Court for establishing bond, do you think they refer once to Mississippi's Victims' Bill of Rights? Just a question.
Not.
Do you think they refer once to the Victims' Bill of Rights?
No, because it has been a building problem to me in America in general over the past decade, I would say, that we care much more for the assailant than we do the victim, it seems.
Oh, yeah. It's all about the rights of the accused. But let me tell you something. We also need to make sure it's mandatory in this state that whenever we have a bond hearing and it goes before the judge, that the judge has to be given the prior arrest record. Because, yeah, it's okay to say innocent until proven guilty. That is the bedrock of our judicial system going back to our founding fathers. However, if a judge sees that this person who is accused in a violent crime has an arrest record that's longer than a shotgun, and then he looks at that and its arrest records on violent crime, that should then be a determinant in saying, no, this person's a danger to society. This person needs to be locked up until the trial date and not allowed to cause further harm on our society.
I would love to see stats, and I have a suspicion about what band they would fall in, but I would love to see the stats on how many people commit an act of violence while they're out on bond awaiting trial for a different act of violence. That number's not zero, and that's exactly the problem you're talking about.
We've seen it in our community. For one thing, it's getting harder and harder to prosecute and get a conviction because you've got to have good forensics, and the crime lab, is not properly funded. We're hoping the legislature can increase funding. We're losing forensic scientists every year to other states. They come right out of University of Southern Mississippi with a forensics degree. They work a year, and then they go sometimes making double in other states. We're one of the lowest-paying states for crime lab. But then on top of that, it's getting harder to get a conviction because people are so scared of retaliation that they won't even testify against the person who has done them harm. This has happened in Natchez. We had someone just last November who had shot someone literally in the head. The person would not testify against them, but they were still, we still were able to arrest them, file charges for attempted murder. The person survived. Attempted murder, and we put them in jail, and the very next week they bonded out on a cash bond because some of these assailants, because of their records, have a lot of cash in their drawer because they're in a certain business. I think it may be the pharmaceutical business, but, you figure that out. But, Dave, this person 3 weeks later attacked one of our police officers with his bare hands. State of Mississippi, that's called simple assault, unless you're using a firearm or a weapon, which is aggravated assault. Simple assault on a law enforcement officer in Mississippi does not carry a minimum penalty. The minimum penalty is zero. He was, in a few months, found guilty, but released for time served. And then the bond that he had in place on the attempted murder charge is still in effect. Because in Mississippi, unless the penalty is 5 years or more for the crime you're bonded out on, you commit another crime, that bond can't be revoked. To me, it shouldn't matter if the penalty is 0 or 10 or 50. If you've committed a violent crime on someone, well, let's say you're accused of that, you're out on bond, and you commit another crime, that bond should be revoked. You should be in jail. Don't tell me you can attack a police officer in this state with your bare hands and not have the bond revoked on your prior crime. Now, we're just touching the surface. There's something, I know time's limited, but Dave, I just got to tell you something that I think people just really won't believe because I'm learning too much. Are you ready for it?
I am braced and ready, Mayor. Lay it on me.
Dave, when you go through all of these crimes and you look at it, more and more, these are young people who are getting guns at an early age. They are getting onto the streets. They're getting away with it. They're becoming brazen. They're training others to do it. And what we're finding is, all across the state, we are having people, generally under the age of 30, who are repeat offenders so bad that some of them have 5 or 10 arrests and are still on our streets and are still able to bond out.